College basketball was in the spotlight this month as 48 teams entered the single-elimination NCAA Division I basketball tournament, and in the end, the Final Four made a trip to Indianapolis and competed for the coveted national championship. The NIT tournament also crowned a champion, and more than a few college basketball coaches were on the move. Major League Baseball may or may not start next month. News from the world of tennis and more in the March 1980 edition of Back in Time Sports. The final regular season AP poll for college basketball, released on March 3rd, had DePaul still atop the rankings, followed by Louisville, LSU, Kentucky, and Oregon State. All 20 teams in the poll either earned an automatic qualification to the NCAA tournament or were expected to be given an at-large invitation. After 2 days of deliberation, the Division I Basketball Committee, led by Big Ten Commissioner Wayne Duke, named DePaul, LSU, Kentucky, and Syracuse as number 1 seeds. The Big East Conference did not qualify for an automatic bid, having only formed last summer. But in addition to Syracuse, conference members St. John's and Georgetown also received at-large invitations. The ACC had the most teams included with 5, the Big Ten and Pac-10 had 4 each, and the Southeast and Metro conferences each had 3. DePaul, Notre Dame, and Marquette were the only independent teams in the field. There will be a new champion this year, as neither last year's winner Michigan State nor runner-up Indiana State received an invitation. Despite DePaul being number 1 in the rankings, they were put in the West region, with the other 3 number 1 seeds getting more favorable regions. The Blue Demons were still the favorite to win the tournament at 4-1 odds, followed by Louisville at 9-2, and Big Ten teams Indiana and Ohio State both at 5-1. The Midwest region was regarded as the toughest to get through, with LSU, Louisville, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Missouri, and Southwest Conference champ Texas A&M as the top 6 seeds. The tournament was expected to net $90 million this season, with half going to the competing schools and the other half going to the NCAA. Teams were to receive $80,000 for playing in the first 2 rounds, $200,000 for reaching the regional semifinals, and $320,000 for advancing to the national semifinals. Ticket prices were around $20 to see all 4 first and second round games at each region. The selection committee appeared to be validated in their seeding of teams in the first round of the NCAA basketball tournament, with all but 2 of the 16 games going according to chalk. The 2 upsets were the number 12 Penn Quakers beating number 5 Washington State, and number 10 Lamar knocking out number 7 Weber State. Penn was the Cinderella story of last year's tournament, making the Final Four as the 9th seed out of 10 teams in their region. The second round had a few more upsets, with the biggest being number 8 UCLA knocking out number 1 DePaul. Also in the West region, lower seeds number 6 Clemson and number 10 Lamar advanced. Purdue and Texas A&M were also number 6 seeds advancing. LSU was the only number 1 seed advancing to the regional finals, with number 5 Iowa upsetting number 1 Syracuse and number 4 Duke beating number 1 Kentucky. Number 6 Purdue and number 8 UCLA also advanced. In the regional finals, Darrell Griffith and Louisville eliminated the final number 1 seed, and the 3 other lower seeded teams all won their games as well to advance to the Final Four. The coaches for the Final Four teams were all remarkably similar in age. UCLA's Larry Brown is 39, Lee Rose of Purdue and Denny Crum of Louisville are 43, and Iowa's Lute Olson is 45. This will be the first championship for the coach whose team wins the next 2 games. The semifinal games were both close affairs, with Louisville beating Iowa 80-72 and UCLA defeating Purdue 67-62. In the championship game, Louisville was down at halftime by 2 points, and with 4.5 minutes left, they were down by 4 points. However, they would rally to score 9 straight points and win the title by a score of 59-54. In the NIT tournament, the Final Four at Madison Square Garden included UNLV, Illinois, Minnesota, and Virginia. UNLV coach Jerry Tarkanian made his NIT debut this year after having been to the NCAA tournament 7 times in his career. However, UNLV was easily defeated by Virginia, who then went on to beat Minnesota 58-55 to become the NIT champion. Freshman Ralph Sampson of Virginia was named the tournament MVP, and while senior Kevin McHale of Minnesota had a subpar final game, he is still expected to be a top pick in this year's NBA draft. After the college basketball tournaments wrapped up, more than a few head coaches made moves to new teams. In the Big 8, Iowa State signed Johnny Orr to a 6-year contract for $45,000 annually. Orr has been the head coach at Michigan the last 12 years and led the Wolverines to a runner-up finish in the 1976 NCAA tournament. At Oklahoma, Billy Tubbs signed a 5-year contract for $46,000 annually to replace Dave Bliss, who resigned to take the job at SMU. Oklahoma was reported to have offered Georgetown head coach John Thompson $120,000 a year to take the job, but Thompson will remain with the Hoyas. South Carolina bought out the contract of longtime coach Frank McGuire for a reported $400,000 and hired Bill Foster away from Duke for 5 years at $50,000 per year. Duke then hired 33-year-old Army coach Mike Krzyzewski. North Carolina State hired Monty Kiffin as its new head football coach earlier this year and now has a new head basketball coach in Jim Valvano, who led Iona to several upsets in this year's tournament. Valvano was asked how difficult it was recruiting players at Iona. He said, quote, "I used to go up to kids and say, 'Hi, Jim Valvano, Iona College.' And the kid would say, 'Wow, you must be the youngest dude in the country who owns his own college.'" In related news, Fordham extended head coach Tom Penders for 4 more years, and North Carolina has a new athletic director in John Swafford, who at 31 years old is believed to be the youngest AD of a major college. A survey among all coaches this month indicated they want a change to the rule of a player hanging on the rim after a dunk. This year, a technical foul has been assessed to players who grasp the rim, but coaches by a 4-1 margin would like the rules to allow for staying on the rim if player safety is a factor. Coaches were also against implementing a shot clock in college basketball by a margin of 6-1. The NBA currently has a 24-second shot clock. The Parade All-American high school basketball teams were announced in March. Glenn Rivers and Derek Harper were judged by the board to be the top backcourt players in the country. Center Pat Ewing was the only junior named to the first team. On the parade list for high school girls basketball, twin 6'3" sisters Pam and Paula McGee of Flint, Michigan were both named to the first team. And also on the first team is the smallest player on the list, 5'4" Kim Mulkey out of Hammond, Louisiana. Cheryl Miller, a 6'2" sophomore from Riverside, California, was named to the second team and was only one of 2 players who are not in their senior year. Miller was also named to the All-American team last year as a freshman and has a chance to become the first player, male or female, to be named to the All-Star team 4 straight years. With spring training wrapping up for Major League Baseball, no progress has been made on a new agreement between the owners and players. The players have voted 967-1 in favor of authorizing a strike on or after April 1st. Dates for a strike that have been mentioned are on April 1st, April 9th, which is opening day, Memorial Day weekend, and July 10th, immediately after the All-Star game. The only strike in Major League history lasted 13 days in 1972 over a dispute about players' pensions. If the season does play out without interruption, the World Series may be a Southern California affair, as both the Los Angeles Dodgers and California Angels are 5-2 favorites to win their respective leagues, according to Harrah's Race and Sportsbook. In the National League, the defending world champion Pittsburgh Pirates have the next best odds at 7-2, with Philadelphia and Houston both following at 4-1. In the AL, the Yankees are a close second to the Angels at 3-1, with Milwaukee and last year's AL champs Baltimore next at 5-1. If you're looking for long shots, the Mets are 200-1 and the Blue Jays are 250-1. The Angels may be the betting favorite for the AL pennant, but they'll have to contend without pitcher Nolan Ryan, who signed a $4.5 million contract with the Astros last November, which made him the game's first player to earn over $1 million a year. Ryan led the American League in strikeouts 7 of the last 8 years and has thrown 4 no-hitters, tying Sandy Koufax for the most in Major League history. Although multi-million-dollar contracts for players are becoming more common for Major League stars, Al Hrabosky has an unusual one. Hrabosky signed a contract with the Braves for 5 years with a value of $5.9 million. However, Hrabosky is not exactly in the $1 million a year club. The contract includes deferred payments over 35 years. Long after his playing days are over, Hrabosky will still be getting a paycheck in the 21st century. The overall number 1 draft pick in 1977 appears to be ready to get a chance with the White Sox this year. 21-year-old Harold Baines will likely be the White Sox starting right fielder. White Sox manager Tony La Russa says it's still too early to say Baines has earned the job, but the left-hander has improved each of the last 3 years in the minors, batting .298 with 22 home runs last year at AAA Iowa. Several NBA playoff battles came down to the last games of the regular season. The Washington Bullets needed a win against the New Jersey Nets to avoid missing the playoffs for the first time in 12 years. A Nets win would knock Washington out of the playoffs, but help their arch-rival New York Knicks into the playoffs. Phil Jackson, now with the Nets after playing most of his career with the Knicks, said he was hoping to contribute to a win for New Jersey. In the end, the Bullets ended up getting some clutch points by Elvin Hayes to keep their playoff streak alive. Also, Houston claimed home court advantage in the first round with a win over Indiana. 12 of the 22 teams in the NBA made the playoffs. The 4 division winners will get byes in the first round, and the other teams will start with a best-of-3 series. After the first round, all matchups will be the best of 7. The Celtics claim the best record in the league and will have home court advantage throughout the playoffs. In other NBA news, Dallas was officially awarded a franchise for the 1980-81 season, which prompted a realignment of teams. Milwaukee and Chicago will be moved from the Midwest Division in the Western Conference to the Central Division in the Eastern Conference. Houston and San Antonio will trade places with the Bucks and Bulls and will join Dallas in the Midwest Division. Actor James Garner and singer Willie Nelson are among the new owners of the Dallas team. Among the names under consideration for the team are the Wranglers, Express, and Mavericks. John McEnroe became the number 1 tennis player in the world after beating Jimmy Connors in the U.S. Indoor Championship in early March. The 21-year-old McEnroe passed Bjorn Borg for the top spot. Connors held the number 1 spot in the rankings for a total of 5 years during the last decade, and Borg has held the number 1 ranking for the last 9 months. McEnroe's reign at the top of the rankings was somewhat short-lived, as Borg retook the top spot 3 weeks later. The U.S. men's team that included McEnroe has also been eliminated from the Davis Cup after winning the title the last 2 years. Argentina, who knocked out the U.S. team, is now one of the favorites when the finals are played at the end of this year. Another team that is expected to go far in the Davis Cup is Czechoslovakia, led by Ivan Lendl. However, the 20-year-old Lendl lost to McEnroe March 30th in an individual event in Milan, Italy, their first meeting on the court. On the women's tour, 17-year-old Tracy Austin won the indoor championships at Madison Square Garden in front of over 13,000 fans, defeating Martina Navratilova for the title after beating Billie Jean King in the semifinals. Austin followed up that performance a week later by defeating Navratilova again in the first outdoor event for 1980 in California. Each victory was worth $100,000, but for now it's back to high school for Austin. The Philadelphia Flyers have clinched the best record in the NHL and home ice advantage for all of their playoff matchups. 11 other teams have clinched a playoff spot, with 4 more still up for grabs. Last year's Stanley Cup champions, the Montreal Canadiens, and runner-up New York Rangers also have claimed playoff spots. The NHL playoffs have expanded from 12 to 16 teams this year after the league expanded from 17 to 21 teams. The playoff teams will be seeded from 1 to 16 based on their regular season points, regardless of conference or division. The scoring title for this season is a close battle between Marcel Dion of the Los Angeles Kings and rookie Wayne Gretzky of the Edmonton Oilers. They are currently tied at 133 points, with each having 3 games left. An interesting situation occurred earlier this month when Bobby Hull was traded from the Winnipeg Jets to the Hartford Whalers. After coming out of retirement to join the Jets this year, the 41-year-old Hull was sidelined with an injury, but returned to action this month. What made the situation unique is that Hull is part owner of the Winnipeg Jets. The president of the NHL, John Ziegler, is now investigating a potential conflict of interest. By all accounts, it's unlikely the league will take action. In racing news, last year's NASCAR Rookie of the Year Dale Earnhardt won his 2nd race in a row, winning in both the Atlanta 500 and 2 weeks later at the Southeastern 500 at Bristol International Raceway. Earnhardt has top 5 finishes in the first 6 races of the Winston Cup Series and is currently the points leader. Tom Watson and Earl Campbell were among the recipients of the 7 Crowns of Sports Awards, who each received a trophy and $10,000. The awards have been presented annually since 1974 by Seagrams to players in professional leagues who rate the highest by computer analysis in their particular sport. Elias Sports Bureau developed the computer-based set of standards to arrive at a productive efficiency rating. The computer formula takes into account metrics like clutch performance, consistency, playing time, offensive and defensive effectiveness, and responsibilities of the player's position. Dallas Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach announced his retirement after 11 years in the NFL. The 1963 Heisman Trophy winner at Navy won 2 Super Bowls with Dallas in 1971 and 1977. Danny White is expected to take over for the 1980 season. That's all for March 1980. Looking ahead to next month, a recap of the NFL Draft, a finals matchup is determined in the NBA playoffs, semifinals are underway in the NHL playoffs, an update on the Major League Baseball season, and much, much more on the April 1980 edition of Back in Time Sports.